Today we're looking at a purple ink from Faber Castell, Violet Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now there's timestamps down below so that you can skip around to the parts you're most interested in, or if you watch the whole thing, I'd appreciate you. You can follow me on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen inks as much as I do, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Pierre Cardin President with a medium nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. I used 3 papers to standardize in some of my writing samples: Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There are additional writing samples that'll come later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, but it does offer some shading spots. Spots that are darker, like the O in violet is darker, the T is violet, the E is violet, is darker, the E is darker, and the top of the B is darker. So there are darker spaces in this writing. Now the extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it still offers some shading spots, like the T is lighter than the he. Q is darker than the rest of the word until we get to K, which is much darker. Brown starts dark and works its way light, 14 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, plenty of shading. Look at the word quick. Starts dark, gets light, gets dark again, gets light again, gets dark again. Brown starts dark, gets to mid-tone, gets dark, gets very light. Beautiful shading, 18 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we get plenty of color variation. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it offers decent shading. The E in over is a bit darker. The K in quick is a bit darker. The T in the is a bit lighter than the rest of the word. Brown starts dark and gets light. 19 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. No feather, no spread. There is haloing that occurs on the dark parts. So on the HE in the, we have haloing, but not on the T. So where the ink is darker, we're definitely getting some halo. That was the word. We don't get it a whole lot. We've gotten it a couple times here recently. No sheen, shade, and halo go hand in hand. As it's darker, like the bottom of the Q, there's halo. So it's very nice. When it's lighter, the halo's not there. 26 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us no color variation, but that is not what we got in the writing sample. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade here. 15 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit lighter than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, but it does have shading. Like in quick, it goes very dark to light to dark to super dark at the K. Brown starts dark, goes to mid-tone, gets darker again. Fox starts light and gets dark. So the shading's back with the medium. 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby of both show us color variation. The extra fine when you see it far left to far right, although we didn't get a lot in the writing. The medium shows tons, and we got tons. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is what looks to be a fairly uniform purple pushing its way up. you really only see the purple, so the purple and the blue that really seem to be there later are moving together. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And what's interesting is the blue is very much stayed at the bottom in a line. It's a nice thick dark line together. There's even a little bit of water separation between that blue and the purple. The purple has pushed its way up, which gives us for why they're calling it violet blue. But we expect some permanence on this ink. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I immediately go to the lowercase h. It has a bunch of blowout and blurriness all through it. For that reason, I could not recommend using this in a note-taking situation. I'm just always afraid that you're going to have cured cancer and highlight and then lose it. That's it. Looking at the water, it's only removing some of the darkest tones. It's not really doing a lot other than moving the ink around. But pen flush is completely reactivating and completely taking it off the paper. That was only 30 seconds of that being there, and I believe that with just a little bit longer, it'll all go away. Now, 1/3 bleach solution did not completely obliterate it off the paper. It left this weird magenta-y tone stain there, but that was only 30 seconds. I'm going to come back to the fact that I don't think you need a 1/3 bleach solution, but that pen flush is all that you're going to need to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Now I'm going to link the video that shows how I do my testing and calculations. Graf von Faber Castell's Violet Blue has a viscosity of 1.71, making this a very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Graf von Faber Castell's Violet Blue has an average dry time of 19 seconds, which is normal. The higher side of normal, but still normal, which, considering how wet this ink was, is quite interesting. Instead of finding inks that look like Graf von Faber Castell's Violet Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And I wanted a nice magenta, like Diamine Amaranth. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, white lines, and Strathmore writing paper. Here we're looking at this on the yellow Rhodia to see what kind of color variation we can get for different colors behind it. Now, the thing is, they call it violet blue, and it's very interesting when you put colors next to each other with what happens, because on the white paper, right next to it, it starts to look more blue. Although it's looked very violet this whole time. It starts to look more blue. On the yellow paper, next to the writing with the Y, it looks much more violet. So it's really bringing out some of those purpley tones. White lines paper, that has been performing very well with fountain pen ink. No bleeding, no ghosting, keeping up the good scores for white lines paper. The 1.1 stub has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. That's okay. It's performing very well on this paper, and I'll take it for that. Now, the extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 5 seconds to dry. The medium is even lighter than the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 7 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both, if you look far left to far right, do show some color variation, but it's not really coming through in the writing sample. And Strathmore writing paper. No bleeding, no ghosting, which is really nice. I've had a lot of these Strathmore writing papers that have had bleed, not their calligraphy paper, their writing paper. I've had a bunch that have had some bleed, and so it's nice when it doesn't. The 1.1 stub has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some nice shading spots. Like the K in quick is much darker. The BR in brown is darker than the rest of the word. The is much darker than over right next to it. In jumps, it starts light, gets very dark throughout, and then on the S starts getting much lighter, so it's very nice stuff. And 7 seconds to dry. Medium is slightly lighter a tone than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and even better shading than we had with the extra fine. Brown starts dark, gets light, gets very dark again. Quick, dark on the left, light through the middle, super dark at the K. Very nice in this writing. 9 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine, far left to far right, shows some color variation, about what we got. And the scrubby of the medium shows much more color variation left to right, which matches what we got. And that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Faber Castell's Violet Blue? The tone itself is a little too light for me. However, when it comes out a bit darker, it does look very nice. Now, because it can get that variation, it tends to be able to shade very nicely, which I approve of. So what pen and nib would give the best writing experience with this ink? I found broad, wet pens. Put enough ink down to really make this color look nice and not washed out. That's my choice. If you've enjoyed this video and made it this far, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. Thanks for watching.